These are the complete interviews with the subjects for the documentary Encounters. The only editing performed on the footage are camera cuts, sound correction, and minor color corrections. This person wished to remain anonymous for the interview. The voice has been altered and the face concealed.
It should be good because I've got that one where this one does eye focus, that one does facial focus, but I've got everything pushed here, so, and I'm kind of looking over your shoulder. It shouldn't focus on you at all.
Okay.
And I'm just checking my time.
And Mike's ready to go?
The mics are ready to go.
All right.
So, this is where we want to start. First of all, we won't use it in the film, but just state your name and whether you're willing to do this on camera.
Okay. My name is Hugh. My name is and I am definitely willing to do this and talk about my experiences. Didn't even realize.
Father to three beautiful girls. In each episode, I will bring together some of the most inspiring people
I haven't
on the
hit
planet
anything.
who are making an impact and changing the world one heartbeat at a time.
You have to close out all your apps. It's probably Facebook.
It was a podcast, and I don't listen to podcasts.
Oh, that's fun.
That's just one of the small weird things that happens throughout this whole thing. All right, let's do it again.
Okay.
Name and whether you're willing to be on camera.
All right. So again, my name is real name, and I am definitely willing to talk about my experiences. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for some time.
All right. Well, we're going to jump right to it.
Okay.
Why are we here for this interview?
Well, truth be told, originally it started as a joke. It was kind of a way to cope with some of the experiences that I had. But then the more that I looked into the project, I realized that I really did want to talk about my experiences. When I was very young, I used to have, for lack of better definitions, visitations. And I'm saying that word very loosely. I want people who are hearing me to understand that my experiences with encounters in general kind of borderlines on reality and questioning what sanity is, and then what reality itself means in contrast to that. Where do you want me to start?
Well, let's start with your first experience that you can remember.
Okay. I feel like I need to give a little context first because I've always been this way, except for in recent years where I've started to socialize more. I've always been secluded, a loner. I'd always, stay to myself. I never bothered anybody. I didn't want to be held as a child. I always just wanted to be left alone.
More of an introvert?
Yeah,
Okay.
but more on an extreme level. I didn't like going outside. I just wanted to stay in my room, watch my cartoons, play with my toys. I grabbed my food. I would never eat at the dinner table. I just liked being alone. I found solace in it. It was easier for me as a kid because nobody would bother me. And at a very young age, I started exhibiting what I will today call an imaginary friend. Sometimes late at night, when I want to say about 4, 5, 6 years old, very young, old enough to understand but not to fully comprehend what was happening, I would have lights come through my window. And one night,
Now, is this light shining through the window, or are lights actually traveling?
I want you to imagine a car pulling into the driveway and blasting its high beams right into your window,
Okay.
almost like that. But this isn't like fluorescence or regular lights. This is something abnormal, just bright, so bright that my whole room in pitch black becomes, well, bright. And so one day I got curious. They would only last for a few seconds, and I got curious and I decided I wanted to know what was causing the lights. I'd get woken up to them in the middle of the night, and I went to the window one day, and I ended up having this flash, like right in my face, that I can't really put into words. I actually am missing a substantial chunk of memories from that age. What I do remember, however, is when that flash happened, the next thing I remember is waking up and my mother is standing in my doorway and I'm sitting on the floor and I have my toys divided in front of me, almost as if I'm playing with somebody. And my mother asked me, "What are you doing? You know, are you supposed to be in bed?" And I'm now that I look back at it as an adult, I think maybe it was 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, maybe. Again, there's so much vague uncertainty, but even though I don't remember saying this, it's a common story told to me throughout my family that when my mom came into my room, I told her that she scared the boy away. And when she asked me what boy, I said the boy that looked like me. And it would happen several different times until eventually it wouldn't happen anymore. Because of this, I was told that I just had a very overactive imagination, imaginary friend, which is the term I used earlier. And it got to the point where I believed it so much that my mother decided to take me to a therapist. Maybe I was exhibiting some kind of, mental concern in relation to constantly always being alone. Maybe my brain is making up things. And so they put me on medications that, quite frankly, were not good for me. They did make things worse for me. And as I got older, I had another experience that I could not explain. And this is really where I start to become more aware of maybe what I'm experiencing isn't the result of past trauma or my childhood or medications or any of that. I was 12 years old and we were on a road trip. Me, my sister, and my mom's roommate at the time, we were on a road trip to go see my sister's friend. I didn't want to stay at the house, so I decided to tag along with them. And I was sitting in the front of the car, and my eyes, they were averted to the tree line, where I saw these yellow and red lights blinking, kind of like on a water tower, which at the time, I processed as a water tower. And I didn't think anything of it. We kept driving. Soon it was hidden behind the trees, and we kept driving for another few minutes. And then finally, once we cleared the tree line, we saw it again, but this time it was coming towards us almost. And I remember focusing on it and being so young, being 12 years old, nobody listens to you when you're 12. And I'm like, look at this, it's so cool, what is that? Nobody cared. And we ended up driving up underneath it. Turns out it wasn't round at all. It was actually rectangular. And I remember, looking up through the windshield as we're passing under it, leaning in. And I tried to get Terry to look, and he wouldn't look, and he just focused on the road because he was driving, and my sister was on the phone with her friend in the back, and doing what teenage girls do. And so here I am in this car with multiple people experiencing something that, I'm the only one essentially seeing. So I thought it was crazy. And at 12, I came to terms with my own sanity and what I was seeing. And to clarify on exactly what I was seeing, this rectangular thing that was hovering over us as we were passing under it was about, well, I can't really put it on a scale with my hands, but it was high enough to where it was discernible, but it was also small enough to realize that I couldn't make out any necessary details. But the two things that stood out the most was that on the bottom left corner, like if you're looking at this in front of you, so you have on the bottom left corner 2 lights, and on the top right corner 2 lights, and nothing here. So it's just these two.
Those 2 diagonal corners.
And it's just flying over us. And then I tried to look in the rearview mirror to see if I could see it, in the mirror, and we just happened to be turning, which of course, in a rearview mirror, passenger side mirror, like perspective is skewed, so it's like you don't actually see what was in front of you. It's all about perspective.
And you said it was rectangular. Is it rectangular like a brick or like a stepping stone block, or?
To be honest with you, I guess it would be better to explain it almost like a brick, yeah. The thing that really perplexes me is that the edges weren't pointed, they were curved. Almost There's a technical name for the shape. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's rectangular with curves, kind of like, well,
Well-
kind of like a cell phone.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
But thicker.
Yeah. Just to kind of, before we get into like the main part of this, for years, I kept it to myself, except for the therapist that I was seeing. And they tried to convince me that I was having hallucinations. And so I switched on to other medications that I later found out that I actually didn't need. They put me on Seroquel and Concerta and Zyprexa, and they put me on, starts with a P, Prozac, sorry. And so they kept putting me on all these different medications to try to combat this supposed imbalance in my brain. As I got older, I started realizing that a lot of the medications that I was being put on came from abuse. People trying to fix things in me that didn't exist to get attention from others. The technical definition was Munchausen's by proxy. And so I dealt with that, coping with that, and it wouldn't be for another 7 years that I would actually be able to share my experiences with somebody in a real life setting where I was not the only one witnessing it at that time. You have to understand that I'm aware that what I'm saying sounds crazy, and I'm aware that not everybody is going to believe what I'm trying to say. I'm aware that the things that I'm trying to explain are vague, and in contrast, they may not necessarily make sense to people, but these are experiences that are real to me. You know, they're personal to me. They're things that I hold on to because I've never been able to make sense of them. I remember how I felt when I saw these things. It was like peace, blank. No stress, no thinking, no nothing, just utter fascination and bewilderment, like a moth to a light bulb, you know? And I'm not saying that as a cliche, that's genuinely how I felt.
I feel like when it comes to speaking about encounters and extraterrestrials, I think there's this really taboo or niche thing where people want to try to make it like a movie idea. You know, they want to adapt a level of fantasy to what they're actually experiencing, because that's kind of how our brains are matched with today's media. We see things, and that's the only way you can explain it, is to compare it to something, you know. But for me, I lived it.
I think we're good.
For me, I lived it, and it's real to me. And that's really what I want people to understand, is that even if you don't believe what I'm about to tell you, for me, it's a real experience. So I mentioned before that it wouldn't be for another 7 years that I'd have another experience. I stopped taking those medications for about a year. At the age of 18, I started being more independent and really trying to find myself and trying to find what made me tick. And so I found a fascination with the stars, and I invested in telescopes and, just, really dumb applications that obviously were never going to go anywhere. The ones that were like, try to map out the stars, but I'm actually looking at the moon when it says Venus, like really,
Right.
really dumb apps. And I didn't really get the chance to have much of a childhood because of what I was experiencing growing up. So as a result, a lot of my childhood started later in life. And so at 18, I'm exploring all these things, and I'm researching all these things, and I'm finding myself. And one night, I'm outside, and I'm on the phone with my cousin, minding my own business. I'm telling her about this book that I was reading. I don't remember exactly what the book was. I was in an anime phase, so I was reading a manga at the time. And while I'm standing outside, the sun is setting, where like the sky is kind of like a really dark orangish purple, like right where it's just right beyond the horizon, and the moon is still coming up. And it was a really beautiful, beautiful night. It was a clear sky. I'm on the phone with my cousin. The day was March 31st, 2012. And I remember the day clearly because there were two lights hovering over the tree line. And I freaked out and I was like, you know, if you could bleep the name out, I appreciate it. I'm like, you're not going to believe what I'm seeing right now. She's like, what? What are you seeing? I'm like, I'm seeing these lights coming over. It's like headlights coming from over the tree line. Just to kind of give you context of like what the environment is that I'm standing in. I'm in this open field. It's a small neighborhood. And it's got a dirt road going all the way down. And at the end of the dirt road, you can see just nothing but acres and acres and acres of trees. I'm thinking, okay, so this is weird. Nothing should be able to come back there. There's no road, there's no nothing. It's literally 100 acres of just straight trees, no trails, no nothing. So where's this light coming from? And at first, I thought it was coming from the trees. It was coming from over it, slowly rising up and then going over. And then it started heading towards me. And I actually have a recording of that day, which I'll give to you. But I want you to understand that, again, I was young, I was naive, I was sheltered, so I mean, I said some dumb things in that recording. I mean, we all do that when we're young. And I was freaked out. I said, hey, hold on a minute. And I ran into the house and I was like, Mom, come here, you need to see this. I need you to see this. And she's like, what? I was like, Mom, I don't have time to explain. Just hurry, come. I'm trying to pull her out of the house. And so we come out of the house and we walk over to the dirt road. And then as we're standing there, it's already past the trees. So if the trees are here, it's now here. And it's hovering slowly, coming towards us. I mean, and it's up there, but these lights are bright. And I still see two. But the closer it gets, the lights are going from this to this. And then as it's hovering over us, there's no sound, there's no nothing. You can almost see a little bit of detail on the underside of it. It's kind of like two lines, two circles in each corner, and those two circles, they have lights. Just like I saw when I was 12, and then it hit me.
Was it still rectangular?
Still the same shape. And it hit me. And I was like, Mom, please tell me you're seeing this. Please tell me you're seeing this. She saw it. She acknowledged it. She's like, yeah, I'm seeing this too. And so we stood there and we watched as it came over us. And it just kind of sat there, slowing down a little bit. And then again, no sound. You could almost, like if you listen just close enough in the chaos, you could almost hear kind of like a warble, like a low warble. And then it just started going. And then it shifted and it went all the way out. And it never like vanished in the blink of an eye. It just hovered away, like in real time. And if I had a camera at the time, I would have recorded it. The phone that I had at the time, it was a flip phone from Page Plus. So I mean, you know how that goes. That little 1-2 megapixel camera was not going to pick up anything, period. I already knew that.
Yeah.
But I did actually take the phone and I did record audio of that night.
And that was March 31st, 2012.
2012.
The following night, I still was trying to get over it, still trying to understand what I was seeing. And I went outside like I always do, and I was looking up at the sky and just, another clear night. And then I noticed at about 11 o'clock at night that there was these blinking lights in the sky. And I mean dozens. I don't mean just one, not two, not three. I mean at least 16 of them in the sky. And they're all just dancing around, and they're so high up that they look like these little tiny specks.
And are these red and yellow lights still, or?
There were primarily yellowish orange, but I'm wondering if that had to do with distance. I don't know how exactly light works, but when I say, red and yellow, it's kind of like an offset of orange and red. It's not like a direct blood red or brick red.
Right.
Or if
Red tint, And the
Like
yellow
orange.
being like a warm color.
Yeah, kind of like a orange glow with a red center, almost. And I call my cousin up again, and I say to her, it's like, hey, are you seeing anything on your side? And she's on the other side of town, and she steps out, she looks up, and she's like, oh my God, I'm seeing it too. 3 streets away, I also had I won't call him a buddy, but an acquaintance of mine who was seeing it as well, and I wouldn't know that until I would make this recording, and I would attempt to publicize it, but it's on a long dead channel, so I mean, but he commented on the recording. He's like, yeah, man, I saw it too. I freaked out. In fact, I'll read exactly what it is that he said.
I tell you, while you get ready to set that, I'm gonna reset the cameras.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
All right, let me check my clock. We're good.
So this is, let me get the exact date. Yeah, okay. So this one was uploaded on March 31st as well. I have 2 recordings, one without audio, and actually just cut that part. So what he said was, I just saw the same thing. Pretty much there were 2 lights far apart, and they were blinking at each other, like they were communicating with each other. Then they came together and started blinking as one. It kind of messed me up a little bit because I've never seen anything like that before. Not a plane or anything. If you haven't seen it with your own eyes, it's hard to believe. The reality of it is I agree with that because I still can't believe what I saw. And apparently where me and my mother were standing that night, we were kind of like in a dead zone, like an epicenter of what was happening. So these lights, they're dancing around, and they're, just like he said, like they're communicating, like they're literally just coming around each other. Some of them are coming around, and then they're coming in, and it just almost synchronizing. It's like it was planned. And it's not something we'd ever seen before, not in this rural area of all places. And the fact that other people from streets over and halfway across town were seeing it too, not just people I knew, but even people who I barely knew were seeing it. For me, that confirms that what I was seeing was real.
And this would be April 1st.
Ironically enough, yeah. And so when I did try to tell people about it, of course, oh, it's an April Fool's joke, it's not very funny, you know how it goes. So I realized that the timing wasn't good. And I mean, there's also a possibility that it was a prank. And if so, that's one hell of an elaborate prank. But I just can't believe that it is.
Now, I won't mention the name on the cameras, but this is in the military town.
Yes.
I mean,
There's
possibility of military aircraft?
I've been living here my entire life. I've been here 30 years. I was raised here. My family was, from this town. They were in the military. And I will tell you that I've been exposed to a lot of things that our base has. They don't have this.
And you weren't in a flyover zone either.
no.
No. In fact, the most that we would ever see fly overhead would be maybe a Black Hawk or a commercial airliner. We would never see like Chinooks or, whatever those triangular jets are
Like
called.
the stealths or whatever.
We would never see anything like that. We would only see basic commercial, like every once in a while we'd see like a helicopter from the hospital, but we would never see any, private military.
It wasn't a military fly zone.
There's no way.
It's just near a military base. That was
Exactly.
it. Okay.
And so I even tried researching it. I even looked into it. I even asked around. there are no rectangular ships from 2012 that, and I say ships loosely because of the terminology we're using here, but there are no rectangular ships, planes, jets, helicopters, or drones that the military has at that time. And the fact that it didn't even make so much as a rumble going overhead tells me that it was not operating on traditional mechanical means. I tried for a while to convince myself that there's got to be some explanation. There's got to be some explanation. And I started thinking back about my childhood experiences and the things that I'd seen before and what people are telling me now and what we're seeing, the following day. And there's nothing that I could come up with that made sense, especially not with the synchronized lights. I mean, it's not like helicopters with searchlights flying overhead or small jets or the occasional red and yellow blinking lights from whatever's floating through the air, like a balloon or whatever. These were choreographed, synchronized. They were simultaneously dancing with one another. And that's the part that really, really f***ed me up the most, is because that's the one thing that made it hard for me to find logic in it. And so the only thing that I can result to is that it has to be something foreign. It can't, in my mind, be something else.
Now, you were having the experiences when you were younger.
Very young.
Again,
Like the one that you say is the boy that looked like you.
Right.
Do you feel that was more alien or more
I think
ghostly?
I think that was my childhood mind trying to make sense of whatever it was that I was seeing. Okay. I don't want to say alien or ghost. I would like to think that it ties in, because when I think about these experiences and what I feel when I had the other two encounters, I had the same feeling. It was blank. It was at peace. I was fascinated. I was allured. That childish wonderment that was there again. And it wasn't because of sheltered or experiences or any of that. It was because of what I was experiencing in general. And I feel like as people, we connect with things emotionally to experiences that are meaningful to us, or that are, that's not how I want to word this. I feel like as people, we connect to things differently, or in our own ways, really. And when you have a certain feeling, it's not just nostalgic, it's not just that, it's something that is there for a reason. It's a certainty. You know what I mean by that? It's a certainty. I wish I had more memories from when I was little, but I was way too young. I was way too young to retain everything. And when you're that young, merging fantasy with reality is difficult. I mean, we believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny. We believe in a happy bunny that poops eggs and gives it to us. Why would something poop eggs that has candy? That just sounds gross. I mean, let's think about that for a second.
Yeah.
But the point is we believe everything that we see, everything we hear. I was told when I was young that it was an imaginary friend. I was also told that maybe a guardian angel. I'm not a very religious person. Even back then, I found religion hard to kind of focus on. And it's not because I don't believe there's something greater out there, and that's something I'll get into in a minute. But it's just because even when I was young, I wasn't exactly that naive, I don't think. But again, I was young. So.
Have you seen a therapist since the event in 2012?
I saw a therapist at the age of 20, a year later.
Did you tell them anything about what you saw?
I did. And their answer to that was to put me on schizophrenic medication, to which I said no. So I have not spoken about this since then, specifically because I was put in a box for a condition that I know for a fact I do not have. That tells me that this isn't an experience that I could speak to freely with other individuals and be able to have a civilized, logical, conceptual conversation about it. It's like if you were in the middle of the witch trials and you said you saw someone floating, they're going to hang you. Period. Like there's no forgiveness when you're open about it, you know. I realize that's not a good example, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. I wanted somebody to believe me, and my biggest confirmation was the fact that I shared that with my mother and my cousin in the moment that it happened. That matters to me more than anything because that is the most definitive proof that I'm not imagining these things. I realize that there is a theory of Tulpa. It's an Indian legend where basically if enough people believe in something, they create a fantasy, like a collective. And I realize that there are group hallucinations. There's no way that this was one. I can't believe it because there's also people outside of my inner circle who witnessed it as well, who I've not talked to since this has happened. And I didn't even know well enough to share this with them. The more that I try to poke holes at it, the farther away I get from finding an answer. The farther I get away from being able to say that this isn't real. You know?
Now, and this is, we're not done talking by all means, but
Right.
you're in the closet, so to speak, as far as these encounters. Does it feel like you've had a weight lifted being able to talk about it?
Yes and no. There's a part of me who is happy to be able to talk to it after so long. It's been 11 years since I've had this conversation with anybody. The other part of me is concerned about anonymity because I don't want to revert back to what people thought of me back then when I mentioned it. The person I was 10, 11 years ago is not the same person I am today. I'm more aware, I'm more conscientious of reality in life and how things work. I don't want to be put in that box. I don't want to be labeled as something that I'm not. I don't want to be called crazy. I don't want to be called insane. I want to know that my experiences are valid and that whether they're real or not, people can appreciate that they're real to me. I don't want to be enabled, but I just want people to listen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, is I just want them to listen. And I realize that's not the world we live in. So if there's even just one person like yourself that listens, then thank you.
And that's what this show's about. You know, we're trying to show that we don't need that stigma anymore. It's out in the open. The government said it's there. Now we're just trying to take that extra step that, people have actually encountered more than just seeing something flying on a radar.
Right. I mentioned earlier that I have a belief, I'm not particularly a religious belief, but that there's a belief that there are things out there. I find it incredibly hard to believe that in this infinite universe that we have outside of our universe and universes outside of that universe, that we are the only living planet with sustainable life. I mean, you can look at the research that we have today, even planets that are in our galaxy itself. You know, we already have 2 neighboring planets that exhibit probabilities of being able to sustain life under certain circumstances. However, that still doesn't mean that they're hospitable. Venus and Mars are prime examples. I mean, Mars, of course, is the biggest cliche of them all, but Venus alone, I mean, contains all the natural properties for life. It's just too damn hot. You know, it doesn't have the right atmosphere. And the further out we look into like the Kepler galaxy or the 1,040 some dwarf planets that we have, there are others that have proof of water, and water means life, you know? If we happen to find just one galaxy that we can actually make a safe travel to that happens to have its own Goldilocks zone like we do, there's got to be life. It may not be humanoid, It could be bacteria, it could be plant, it could be animal. But the point is life, you know? Bacteria is the stepping stone of evolution for those who believe in that. I'm not saying that I believe in an all-powerful God or something that created everything, but I definitely believe that there is something greater than me that is out there. I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean that in a logical sense, because we are a 1 in a billion chance and a 1 in a billion chance yet again. I mean, think about it. I mean, sperm cells, they take 10 seconds to die once they touch air. We are 1 of 100 million every time. That is an incredibly small odd, and incredibly small odds of an infinite universe where we have over 3 billion planets and we are just one that sustains life.
Yep.
That is such an incalculable improbability, and yet we make that a reality just by existing. And that's important. That means no matter how small you feel in the world, even though as big as everything outside of it that exists, you are still that one anomaly that is here. And that's valid, that's important. And people need to know that too.
Yeah.
They need to extend that openness and that thought process to what could also be out there. We may never see it as long as we live, but a couple centuries from now, when our technology is way more advanced, if we make it that far, there's no telling what we're going to find.
We're going to take another time out.
All right.
Hello?
Hey, Mom. I have a quick question for you.
Okay.
I do want to let you know that the phone call is being recorded.
Okay.
So I am actually in the middle of the interview that I told you about earlier.
Right.
I wanted to ask you if you wanted to mention what we saw in 2012, the UFO that flew over us. You'd be 100% anonymous. This is just confirming that 2 people witnessed the same thing. If you're interested, it would really help the documentary. Hello?
What, the one when we were out in the field across the street?
Yeah. Do you feel
Oh.
comfortable talking about it? Do you remember it that clearly?
I remember we were out there in the field, and there were all kind of lights over us. We couldn't figure out where they were coming from. I mean, that's been a while back. That's like 10 years ago.
I know. So I went into detail about how I was freaked out and how I pulled you out of the house. Do you remember when it hovered exactly above us? Do you remember what you saw? You remember the rectangular? Like, do you remember exactly what you saw?
To be honest, not exactly. That has been a long time ago. I know it was bright.
Okay.
It was very quiet. I'm trying to remember how many lights. Son, it's been a long time.
If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, it's okay. Again, like I said, we are recording this. We're not going to use it without your permission. But would you be open to talking about it more a little bit later in the future if you have time to think about it?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and go, and we're going to wrap up the interview. And I will
Okay.
talk to you about it a little bit later, okay?
All right.